Welcome to our second space on the discussion for NEP. So we have these ongoing sessions known as NEP Guruvar, where we dive deeper into the aspects of the national education policy and try to understand about how that policy is going to play out, how the implementation will look like, what are different aspects of it, what are certain positives, what are certain things which need to be worked upon. So that's the purpose of these NEP Guruvars. Also, what we intend to do here is getting as many voices as we can rather than just apart from the people from Bhasha Lab. Uh, we feel like it would be great if multiple people who have different views on the education sector and different experience in the education sector come in and speak. So that's the agenda. Right now we have Deepak, Girish, Ananya and Prathamesh who are associated with Bhasha Lab here, and we so we would also like to hear from you both, Sugra ma'am and Shri Ranjani ma'am, about your experience, your background, and just about your work in the education sector. Okay, so maybe like we can start with your introductions, and then we can move on.
I'm Shri Ranjani. I'm an architect and interior designer by profession, but I got into teaching, say around 10 years back. I did my early childhood education diploma in early childhood education and NTT. I'm pursuing my postgraduate diploma in early childhood. I work as a curriculum lead in Clay preschools. We're working online, trying to, um, create a connection with the children through online classes, and probably, you know, um, let's see how things work out. So I'm thank you for inviting me. I'm not much of a guest speaker, but I'll try giving my inputs as and when required.
Thank
So
you.
I have around 9 years experience. I have developed curriculum for infants, for preschoolers. I've developed a very innovative way to teach children yoga through stories. So that's what I've been doing.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thanks a lot for sharing that. And yes, we all of us will be speaking at different capacities today. So very excited to hear from you also.
Thank you.
Sugra ma'am, would you like to go next?
Yeah, as ma'am said, I don't have that much of experience, in the education field, but I have been associated with children from my childhood. So I had worked in a non-profit organization where we used to have inter-school competitions for children where they could basically perform and showcase their talent. And I have done my BA journalism, but over time I thought my passion is with children. So I've done my international Montessori course, and I have been working in this field for roughly around 4.5, 5 years. I think children are the foundation of our country, and given the right medium, I think children can really, really go ahead in life. So as a teacher, I hope I can mold them in the right way. Whatever little input I can give with my experience, I'll do as much as I can. So thank you for having me over.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I'm Sri Ranjani ma'am. So it's an honor to have both of you here. I'll just frame how this call is going to look like or what the structure is going to be so that we can engage the best for the next 1 hour. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll first go through the aspects of the policy, what the policy says about early childhood care and education. So we'll be only.
I'm sorry, I got disconnected. I
That's
just
okay.
came out. Sorry
No
about it.
problem at all. So
Yeah.
we are just starting now. So first we'll quickly just run through what the national new education policy of 2020 says about early childhood care and education. So in the very first section of the policy, they have talked about ECC, and we'll just quickly do a factual recall of what those points are. So there are 9 points they have put down about early childhood care and education. So, what government it's saying is that till now, the previous policies have not talked about early childhood education and care. They just started off from the school time. So if you look at RT or even the previous policies which were created in 1986 or in the reiteration in 1992, there was only a discussion about the primary schooling and secondary schooling and nothing about early childhood care and education. Now what the government is saying is that over 85% of the child's cumulative brain development occurs prior to the age of 6, and that's a period that we cannot miss. So that is why a strong investment in ECC is needed. What they are saying is that we will have universal provisioning of quality early childhood development, care and education. And to be ready for that, we will have all the infrastructure ready by 2030 for all children at that age. So so that when the students go to grade 1, they are school ready. So school ready is the term that they have used. What they are also saying is that we will focus on multiple domains such as physical and motor development, cognitive development, socio-emotional ethical development, cultural artistic development, and development of communication and early language literacy and numeracy. So this will be the focus. And to be able to do that, a national curricular of pedagogical framework for early childhood care and education will be created. So basically, curriculum will be made for the children who are up to the age of 8, and this will be made by NCERT. Then the next provision is that curriculum is done now. They are talking about access. So universal access to high quality ECC across the country will happen in a phased manner. So they will start with some areas which are pilot areas, and then they will expand to other areas. They have also talked about Anganwadi centers will be strengthened with high quality infrastructure, play equipment, and well-trained Anganwadi teachers and workers. So right now we have Anganwadi teachers who are mostly 10 pass or 12th pass, and then they jump into this teaching early childhood education and care. But what we need is very specialized teachers who have underwent a lot of training, because handling children and developing their mindset at such a young age is not an easy work. So that's why they will have a preparatory class for these teachers. So they will have a 6-month training program for these teachers to get them ready to be able to teach. So 6-month program is for the teachers who are graduate for 10+2, and 1-year diploma program is for the teachers who are just 10 pass. So to get them ready to teach these students. What they have also said is that every child at the age of 5 will move to a preparatory class or Balvatika, which is before class 1, just to make sure that they are at a good level to grasp grade 1 content. So this is what they are saying. They are also saying that they will train all the schools which are in the country. So even the private nurseries or private kindergartens, they will train them to make sure that they are getting the students ready to grade 1. And again, this will happen in the phased manner. So this will come at a little later when the existing infrastructure is ready. And all this responsibility lies with MHRD to ensure continuity from pre-primary school through primary school. So the MHRD will make sure that students move to primary school also, and they don't stop learning at these nursery or elementary or kindergarten schools basically. So that's what the NEP for now talks about. They haven't given very specific details about what the curriculum will include, or how the infrastructure will be built, or where they will start the pilot programs right now. So how this works in the country is that our central government usually acts as an advisory body or the policy making body, and the state governments acts as the people who implement these policies. So now it's up to the state government to actually come out and implement, and that's where the role of all the educator is, that wherever we are working, whether we are working in a private school, secondary school, at the policy implementation level, at an NGO, our responsibility now is to actually collectively come together, have these discussions at multiple levels to make sure that our state has a very strong implementation of this policy. So this is what the policy says about. I just want to touch upon this term, which is known as school ready. So in the very first point, what government has spoken about is ki the goal of early childhood care and education should be to get students school ready. So I just want to understand from different parties involved here, what does school ready mean for our children at this point of time? So you can give your perspective as a parent, as a teacher, especially when we look at our child who is like around 2 to 3 years of age. What do we want that child to learn to be able to be so-called school ready? So we can spend some time discussing on this. Anyone who wants to share anything on this aspect can go for it.
Yeah, school readiness, that term itself, says that the child should be uh, emotionally, physically, intellectually should be ready for school. Parents also play a very important part in school readiness. There is separation anxiety, which the parents can foster, by helping smooth transition into schools. There are prerequisites what the child, needs. Right now in India, we have children going to school at 2.5, sometimes 1.5. Sometimes we have infants where I work. We have children coming at the age of 6 months. So what we need, if the child is happy to come to school, then most of the part is from our side is done. We could take care of it. Ananya has been a teacher, so she knows how that transition of separation anxiety. She had a lot of difficulty in transitioning the children into being happy in school. So what I feel is the school readiness is not intellectually. It should be more of
Emotional.
emotional thing.
That makes a lot of sense. Definitely, that emotional aspect plays a lot.
Yes, yes.
Right. Subra ma'am, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think from early on, I think parents should start making their children emotionally as well as intellectually ready. I think a parent has a role to play. I have 2 kids of my own. I have started from a very young age to basically just make them understand basic concepts, like color, shapes, numeracy, alphabets. I think parents should start it young. I feel a lot of parents wait till the very end. I know a few parents who are ready only to send their children to school from first standard. They feel it's a waste of time and money to send their children to preschools. They feel they can give enough education at home. But I feel it's so important to send your children to preschool because not only numeracy as well as literacy, you get even a lot of social interaction that the children learn, to share with small children, to, other basic playing with children, other basic skills that they pick up when they are in preschool. So I think it's very important for them to go to a preschool so that they are actually school ready. That's what I personally feel.
Right.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. Ananya, there is some, like you also had an experience working with the students who have just
Uh,
started school, just started preschool. So from your
yes,
experience also, you can share your experience as a parent also, all of you.
yes, 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 yes.
Parents here, like, what does it mean to be school ready for your child?
Yeah, so yeah, I completely agree with Subra ma'am because I have a 2-year-old at home, and I really feel the need of a child to go to preschool because they actually learn a lot. And being an ex preschool teacher, I actually feel that a child learns a lot in the age of 2 to 4, 2 to 5. There is a lot of learning going on. So as a parent, I am trying my best to give that a basic foundation for to my child, because just as Sugram ma'am said, that we actually have to make them understand about the basic concept of colors, then numbers and everything. So going to school just don't mean that they have to learn things. It means that they are mingling with so many kids, and it's very important for their emotional level and very important for their growth. So yeah, I feel that is the importance of that. So
Very interesting. I think what we are hearing more about, and something that was something that I also hadn't thought of, was about being emotionally ready, because I work with secondary teachers, more secondary students.
uh,
So my perspective was more towards कि, okay, like how will they meet their academic goals? How will the mathematics and literacy reading levels or maths levels of the students will be at a certain age? But this is this is a completely different ball game, and this is not about getting the students emotionally ready for school, and that's very interesting actually. Like
I just wanted to add one thing. I mean, I've had my son in the UK, and you have these early learning centers which you have for children who are from the age of 6 months to 1.5 months. That is even before they get into like a preschool kind of a concept. And they have so many different activities catered to small children of different age groups, where they put them in different age groups depending on their age, and the kids learn so much from that. I think India basically lacks that. They need to have these early learning centers specially catered for infants till a stage where they reach preschool, because I think that's where they're learning a lot. That's where they're interacting with kids their age. That's where even mums get together with other mums and learn a lot of different socio skills, which maybe one mom knows and the other mom does not. It's through these learning centers that you learn a lot, right from what to feed your child, to how to deal with tantrums, to how to take care of a child who's sick. These are just small things that you exchange, which I feel in India you lack, because I think we have this whole having a joint family concept. When you have parents, when you have families that are nuclear, I mean, people are stuck. So if they have these early learning centers, I think in India it would really help, first parents with, the first newborns. I think that's something that the government should do. I personally feel that way.
राइट सलील, मैं यहाँ पे एक क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहूंगा सोगरा मैम से. मैम, जब
Yes.
ये वहाँ पे थी, ठीक है,
Mhm.
डिड एनीवन काउंसल यू एज इन लाइक यू नो told a very valid point wherein moms also need to learn from each other, right?
Yes.
Even they are
Yes.
new moms, they don't know
Yes.
as to how to go about with things. They're not
Absolutely.
very much aware. So
Yes.
was there any kind of counseling, or did anybody have a word with you regarding these aspects, as in something which you can do at home?
Yes, actually, once you are pregnant, it's very systematic. Right from they have classes for couples where you're taught how to go about with childbirth. Once you are released from the hospital, the midwife, as well as you have counselors in the hospital itself, kind of telling you how to go about it. You have like a hotline number that you can contact if you have problems, because there most people are on their own. Here we are blessed with nuclear families where we end up going to our mom's place and our moms take care of us. But there, most people are independent. And plus, you have these early learning centers. You have storytelling, time for children. So where all mums actually get together. Or you have times where you have special childcare workers who take care of your kids, and they give only mums time, where, it's a mum time where all of you just kind of release your stress, talk about what you're dealing as mothers, new mothers. It's a very nice concept. I think you just understand one situation where a mom who's a new time mom, she really doesn't know how to deal with a kid. In India, you have elders who take care of kids, but there it's a totally different concept. And I'm sure with a lot of people moving into different cities because of IT jobs or whatever, you have a lot of new moms who haven't got a clue how to deal with their kids. So if they have something like this, if the government provides it, I think it will be really, really good for new time moms as well as new children. I mean, new kids, who are born, as well as their whole stage of development of interacting, their cognitive development, their physical and as well as emotional development.
Understood. Shri ma'am, when you ran these early childhood education centers,
Yes.
what was your experience with dealing with new moms?
So we have transition for moms also. We have stages where we bring in moms to the school for 15 days to stay with the child. And there's transition happening there, say 1 hour every day you spend with the child, and you take your child back along with you. Then after a week you leave your child, you stay with your child for 1 hour, leave your child 1 hour with the school, you sit in the reception. So this kind of smooth transition happens here. Even in India, I think we are slowly getting into the UK and US mode of smooth transitioning from home to school. So that's happening. Even if it is happening at a snail's pace, it is happening.
Right.
But
So,
Shri ma'am, at what age does this transition happen? That's once they join the preschool, right?
I work in a preschool and a daycare called Clay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is for working moms, and it is a preschool also. We start from 6 months.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we have from 6 months to 15 months is a program. From 15 months to 2 years is a program.
Okay.
So every
Yeah.
time, even if the child is around 5 years, we have that
Mhm.
transition happening from home to school.
No, this the concept that I'm talking about is the mother is with the child throughout. You have a 1 hour mom and child time. This is not where the child is left to transition into preschool. These are
This
centers
happens
where,
for a month. This happens just for a month.
okay.
The child and the parent together in the classroom to
Oh,
see.
excellent.
Yeah, it happens for a month.
Okay,
But
okay. That's
then,
really
but then there is a time when the child has to be there without the mom, because
okay.
in India, I think we've still not got into the concept of the mom staying, because you know how parents are here in India. We still haven't, we don't trust our teachers
Yeah, that's true. Been there, done that.
and our
Absolutely.
caregivers.
Yeah.
So we need CCTV cameras where we have experiences where we have two laptops where the parent is working. One laptop is just for seeing what your child is doing in the classroom, and the other one is where you work. So this is how we work in our preschool right now. So that trust, we're trying to build a trust with the parents, and that is going to take time.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. I think early childhood education is very different from how it looks like later. So
But
parents,
but I feel most importantly, the parent has to take the child out from that separation anxiety. That is emotionally ready the child to school. Intellectually, yes, it can happen later on in the later stages, but I have seen children who know everything. They know their alphabet, they know their colors, they know everything, but uh, they are not transitioning into the school environment at all. So most of their intellectual aspect is lost when the teacher is trying to get them into the school environment. So that is what I feel, that emotionally the child has to separate itself from home, and the parent might help the child into smooth transition. That is what I feel.
right,
Primary is the separation anxiety.
right, right.
I just want to add, I think if you consider the fact that when we were younger, I think our parents were not that, fanatic about keeping track of where we were, what we were doing. I feel somewhere social, media has created this fear and frenzy into us parents that we are always so scared what's going to happen to our parents, to our
Absolutely,
children,
absolutely,
that we are constantly wanting to monitor just for their safety. I
absolutely.
remember me as a kid, my mom used to leave me at the gate of the preschool and just walk off and come and pick me up after 2.5, 3 hours and know that I would be safe. But because of the social media frenzy, I think as parents, even I'm scared right now to send my daughter in the school bus. I just don't know what is going to happen. So I think because of the social media frenzy, I think parents themselves don't trust the schools as well as the caregivers. So that transition has to happen first, before anybody else can trust the school system or the preschool system. That's what I just feel.
Right. And I think this in itself is a very huge topic to be discussed, which is about the role of parents in all of this, the impact which the parents can have, the trust which parents can have with their teachers. I think
Yes.
that's in itself a huge topic. And I think a lot of light has been shed upon what early childhood education should look like, or what the preschool should build to the students. I also want to talk about the actual content, like when they go to the preschool, what is it that they should be learning to be school ready? Like one big aspect of it is emotional readiness and getting the students to be used to the school structure or the formal learning structure. So that's one. Second is like when the students go to grade 1, they need to start meeting some academic goals as well towards language, towards numeracy. So to get ready for those things, what is it that they should focus on in the preschool? We can maybe like spend some time discussing on this part, and then again you can share your experiences either as a parent, as a teacher, just to see, just to know about like what do we want from our kids in that age group.
Right. Shri ma'am, I think you have been
Yeah.
you have been into curriculum making, right?
Yeah.
So you were the curriculum lead, I guess. So please shed some light on this, ma'am.
What I feel is right now we are into rote learning. So the Indians believe mostly in rote learning, which has to, we have to come out of the rote learning thing and make concepts clear to the children. That is what I feel. There's no conceptual learning happening in our schools. Uh, in At some point, I think we Indians have thrived on rote learning, like say multiplication tables and the maths formula and all that. But that has to, stop now and make concepts clear. That would be my uh, thing right now. What the children should be learning.
Right. So how does it look like in your preschool, ma'am?
Play and learn mostly is the thing that we follow. Children learn by playing. I'm sorry, just give me a minute. There's a lot
No
of
problem.
noise around. I'm sitting outside.
No
Yeah.
problem. Okay, so by the time ma'am is back, would you also like to share your thoughts on this, Subra ma'am and Ananya?
Yeah, as ma'am did say, I think the whole Indian concept of rote learning is what we've been doing for years, including myself. So I'm not going to say anything much, but I think I'm trying to break that with my children, because I believe, for example, if you're writing a definition, I think the keywords are more important rather than learning the whole definition to the T. That's what I believe in. So I make them understand the concept, that what is the concept, rather than just mugging the whole thing. I think kids these days, especially in preschool, should be learn how to do problem solving, you know, and do through trial and error. I think we should allow children to make mistakes, to do trial and errors. And that's the reason why I appreciate the Montessori form of learning, because you're leaving a child with particular Montessori toys and let them learn through trial and error. I think that's the right way for children to learn, because they are using their intellectual capacity to figure out whether they are doing it right or wrong. And as teachers, we're just there to guide them. That's what I think we should be doing, rather than just making them learn the concepts, making them rote like 1 to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, at the end of the day, they will learn it. But if you give a problem in front of them, they may just not be able to solve it. So I think it's very important for them to be, think logically, do problem solving. I think later in life, that's what is going to help them more.
Right. Ananya, would you like to add to this?
Yeah, actually, being a preschool teacher, even I have I have some experience about it. As we said that concept making is very important. In traditional school, what we do is traditional system that we mug up, mostly we mug up, like we have to say that apple is red. But in Montessori school, if a child says that apple is not red, apple is brown, and that is also okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that it is like about letting their imagination grow. So that is also very important, and I think we should actually im- like we should actually work upon that, not on just going through the traditional way and just making our children ready for the school. It should be a process uh, to make them understand the real concept of things. So that I believe that.
I think that sounds. I mean, again, like when we talk about concepts in preschool, it looks very different for them. Like what ma'am also shared and Ananya also shared was about how rote learning takes precedence in the later grades. In the elementary, it should be more about students. One is making mistakes, just getting ready to learn, building that excitement that they need to learn about some concepts, and also building these concepts in a very different manner, such that they internalize these concepts, they internalize the idea of problem solving.
Salil, I would like to ask a question to Shri ma'am. Ma'am,
Yes.
we were just talking about the importance of letting uh, the kids let their imagination run amok. We should not be just limited to rote learning, right? And I think that is the approach that you would also be taking while building curriculums for your preschools.
Yes.
But then once you build that curriculum, okay, now that suppose that kind of open curriculum is in place now, okay.
Yes.
So then how do you go about with teaching the teachers or upskilling the teachers to handle that kind of curriculum? Because normally we know that okay, now you need to teach the students this is A, B, C. But then for such kind of an open curriculum, which makes things very fluid, how do you start upskilling the teachers there? How do you go about with it?
Right now, what matters is basically or primarily what I would say is passion for teaching. And basically, we look for NTT teachers or children who have done their early childhood education. So for them, the concepts of teaching are clear. So we don't need to go into how it is to be taught. Also, we would, what we do is when we train the teachers, we have workshops where, we teach them how to, make those concepts clear by, bringing in some sort of play learning. So, what I believe is children learn while playing. So most important mode of learning during this period from 3 to 6 is playing. So make believe play, role play, that help fosters the development of language and socialization and creativity. So also to explore their environment, the children's learning happens through exploring the environment also. So this is how we train the teachers with a lot of role play activities, and we ask them to do the activities like the child would do. So this is how you know there are means and ways of training the teacher. I wouldn't get into the concept of how it is to be done, because that would be a lengthy process to discuss here. But we put them into the role of a child to know how it is to be done.
Great, man.
One more important thing I would like to add in this. Basically, we all are discussing about how exactly we should teach our kids and what we expect from teachers. So there is also one important thing, according to me, which we should focus or our government should focus, is basically the costing. the cost which it brings, the expenditure which it brings. Basically, if you ask about preschools, there are schools who charge more than 1 lakh rupees, right? There
Yeah.
are schools in Mumbai I have seen they charge more than 50,000 as well, right? So this is a important point wherein people who cannot afford to send the kids to these kind of schools are missing a lot, right? So one important thing is the cost which government should control, means it should not be like a business. If we want to improve our education system, it should be very transparent, and we should look into this, basically the government. So this is not even across the country. So if you go in Bangalore, their preschool system is different, and in Mumbai it is different.
Mm.
So the costing is also different. So this things should be taken care of. For example, students studying in Anganwadis and students
Mm.
studying in a high class preschool, these kids are different. So there should be a platform wherein everybody is equal. So in the policy which I read last night, like it is saying that by 2030 we will be bringing these changes. So how exactly the government is going to plan, I don't know, but this is the important factor which should be considered.
Right.
So access is
So
definitely
I think Delhi is already into the mode of government preschools, and we've seen a lot of improvement in the government schools in Delhi. I hope the concept is followed throughout India.
I
I'm
just feel they should have a, one board or one curriculum that everybody should follow. For example, in Bangalore, you have CBSE schools, you have ICSE schools, and you have state board schools, and you can basically actually measure the difference between each board. You know, so if you have just one board across the whole state, then all children are going to be imparted the similar kind of education, irrespective of which school they go to, because it is, it's just one curriculum. Right now, ICSE school focuses more on English and maths, while CBSE is more on science and maths. So there is a disparity there. That's what I personally feel. And for example, as Mr. Deepak said, whereas the disparity between the fee structure for Anganwadis as well as government preschools as well as private preschools charge a leg and an arm for from parents to teach basic concepts to children. So I think government should get down on these private preschool owners and have a standardized fee structure that everybody can afford it. Right now, private ones which are really high end ones, yes, he's right, it goes up to 1 lakh and not everybody can afford it. So it's like they are getting the best and the rest are not. So if it is just one curriculum across, I think everybody can benefit out of it. That's just my opinion. I don't know.
that's very interesting. But definitely access is a huge issue, and that's something that we need to work on. These are some of the measures which the government can start taking, and that does make a lot of sense. What since we have already got back to the policy aspect, it's a good segue to also talk about that. What based on the things which are discussed in the policy, what do we think the government has gotten right? What do we think can be added to it, or what do we think we need to build more clarity on? We can just talk about those aspects a little bit. So, for example, while I was reading the policy, uh, one thing that happened, one thing that stood out to me the most is now finally at an official level we have started speaking about early childhood education and care. So,
Mm.
what as Subramam also said that there needs to be one board which looks into this. There was we had NCRT CBSE which looked at the education from primary grades. We never had a board for early childhood education as such. And now finally government has started speaking about the need to have a curriculum. So that's something that has started, and that's something that's standing out to me. Apart from this, something that I feel is missing is a lot of detail about how those things can be done. So we have a board, but then how we strengthen the Anganwadis, or how do we strengthen the existing infrastructure that we have? That's
One
the
small point I missed, I'll just add. I remember the day where basically last year I went to a school just to inquire what exactly the school structure is, how exactly it goes. So they asked me my CTC. So they were like just checking whether I would be able to pay the fees. So these things really hurt. Means if I'm a parent, and if I work in a small firm wherein I'm not able to earn a huge amount, so is it difficult for me to teach their admit my child in that particular school? So this has to be cleared like in the coming time. So schools should be made. There should be a standard for it.
Uh, when me and my husband were looking out for school, we already always cut our salary into 50% while writing the forms. We just wanted to know what happens, when we, tell them that we don't earn that much to, to put our child. But wherever we went, our child was not called for the interview. It was only me and my husband who used to, you know,
Oh, yes, in Calcutta also, no, it is there because that first your parents will be called for the interview. Then they will ask, I won't say everywhere, but most of the places they'll ask your salary. Then after that, if they think, then only the child will be called for the interview. So it is not on the basis of merit or on the basis of the interview the child is allowed in the school, but majorly on the basis of how they judge the parents, how they think that parents will be able to put their child into school or not. So that is there.
There was one school that discriminated on the basis that if the mother was a housewife, they gave those children more preference. I don't know why, but I guess maybe there was much less workload for the teachers, and I think they wanted mums to take care of the kids. So,
if
uh,
if you live in Bangalore, I can tell you which that school is.
yeah, I guess similar
because
experience.
because my children have gone to that school,
Oh,
and
really?
yes,
Oh my
uh,
God.
and
Yeah.
they've made me I mean stop working and made me a stay-at-home parent until they finish their schooling.
No, at that point I was not working, so immediately they said, "Yeah, go ahead and pay the fee." And for some reason, I did not get a very good vibe of that school, so I didn't even bother going back again. But I was actually surprised because generally schools prefer double income parents; they can afford the school. This was one school where they preferred a homemaker, so I was truly surprised.
I
But
just want to ask Salid on the NEP. I was waiting to ask you. It says the policy says that we will be having subjects where the teacher can teach in their mother tongue. So how is that possible in a place like Bangalore? We have teachers.
yeah,
Just a minute.
Right. So what NEP says is that it doesn't say that a teacher will only teach in their native language or their mother tongue. What it says is that every student has the liberty to learn in their language. So if I want to learn, suppose if my mother tongue is Marathi and I want to learn in Marathi, then I should have the necessary infrastructure, the necessary opportunities to learn the content in Marathi. So that's what they are saying. Now the how of it is very difficult, like even in Mumbai or like cities like Bangalore, Mumbai, even the metro cities where there is a population of all the languages existing,
yeah.
a lot of infrastructure will be needed because everyone will want to learn in a different language. So that how is still not clear. um, there is no mention in the policy about that. What we can, however, discuss is about the part regarding the language piece of it. So that's something that anyway. So at this age,
Ask her to
especially,
open the valve. That cupboard, the valve is there. No, ask her to open it. Off it right now.
so
Take it.
what government is saying is that now we will give now we'll give a lot of importance to language learning in general. So from grade 1, what will happen to the students is we have one language of instruction and we have other two languages which the students just learn about, right? Like the second languages, Marathi or whatever, Kannada. So we have second languages. So what we need to also just talk about is that now that's going to change, because what government has said that these languages.
Need to open the valve. The motor is not sounding good. Okay, Dennis, I'm on call right now. Please do.
So for the students to be ready to learn 3 high-level languages, how does the early childhood education look like for them to get ready, especially in terms of language teaching and learning? Or just like there is also a lot of theory around children learn languages faster at a young age. So how does that look like, or how is that leveraged upon in this early childhood education?
Education.
So maybe like we can hear from, okay, Srinjani ma'am is not here. Okay, we can hear from Sugra ma'am and then Ananya also, just based on your experiences with early childhood learning and also experiences as a parent on how languages can be built at an early age.
Right. Somewhere I feel when at home you're anyway learning your mother tongue. Okay. When you go to school, I think a universal language like English is what you would actually want that kid to start, because if you're planning to get them ready for school, then English is primarily what you're taught in. And with regard to second language, third language, I think maybe in LKG or UKG, they can start off with the second language that here in Karnataka, they have Kannada. So, and Hindi. So they can maybe start with the basic alphabet. So by the time the child is in first standard, he already has the foundation set. That's what I believe in.
But the basic the second or third language, it starts from first standard, right?
Yeah, but Ananya, if it is taught in LKG, UKG, by the time the child is in first standard, they already have the foundation set, because that is the age where the children actually pick up concepts much faster. By the time they are in first standard, they have so much information already, pumped into them that it takes a little longer for them to learn those basic concepts. I think the faster you teach them, the faster it is better.
Yeah. Like previously we had the notion, no, that teaching multiple language can be harmful for the kids. Like it can be heavier for them. They to grasp everything all together or something like that.
Sorry to interrupt, but the fact is that my own kids are having a tough time right now, because they have to learn, really high level concepts in, like my daughter's in second standard, my son is in fourth. So they already have so many things, like you have social studies, you have geography, history, all these extra things. Plus you're introducing languages. So they actually get confused between Hindi and Kannada. They're like is there in Kannada as well as it's there in Hindi. So when they're writing, they actually get confused between the Hindi and the Kannada. Plus my own, mother tongue is Gujarati. So they get confused between that. Plus they're learning concepts from English. So it's like 4 languages at one shot. So you can imagine what the child must be going through. So if they start from LKG, UKG, by the time they come to first standard, they already have their foundation of the alphabets already there, Or they can start with one language in LKG, UKG, and then introduce the second language in first standard. So their one language is completely solid, the foundation. That's what I believe in.
All right.
That's why we used to have those Hindi sessions from
Hindi,
LKG.
yeah.
Correct.
Ma'am, the NEP is talking about a more multilingual approach. Of course, Salil also mentioned that, they are talking about teaching in the student's mother tongue or the local language. Okay. So suppose if this thing comes into play, wherein they teach you into your local language, okay, whatever the concepts are, or whatever, whatever it is, if they teach you into your local language or mother tongue, do you think would that be more effective?
I personally don't think so, because they are not going to follow the same kind of teaching standards in your first and second standard. So how will you transition from your mother tongue to English, which is the universal language? You have all your textbooks in English, you have everything in English. How are you going to move from your mother tongue to or the local language to English? It's going to be a tougher transition. So when I think it's just better to teach them basics rather than try to teach them. And mind you, you have teachers, for example, someone like me, Kannada is not my mother tongue. So for me to manage to teach children in Kannada is not going to be a cakewalk for me. But in English, yes, I can teach concepts. And mind you, children are learning and picking up concepts in English better than in a mother tongue. You have a child who's come from Andhra Pradesh. You have a child who's come from Bengal. You have a child who's come from, Bangalore itself. How are you going to move from one child's language to another? You cannot move between mother tongues.
I
So
have
Right.
a teacher cannot be, a pro in learning all languages before she starts to get into the profession of teaching. So she rather become a translator than actually become a teacher. It doesn't make sense.
Because anyways, for 20 number of students, you will get one teacher only. So
Exactly.
how are you going to move between so many mother tongues?
one point
I
to
mean,
add.
my own personal experience, I had around 17 to 18 kids, ranging from Hindi to Telugu to, Marathi to Gujarati to Marwadi and Kannada. How would I keep moving from languages? It's
Right.
just not possible. Yeah.
I have a point here,
Yeah.
basically. So the most important point is, do our kids speak mother tongue at home? Like mother tongue, they really speak at home. It is a basic point. So I have seen parents like in my home as well. My mother tongue is Hindi and Bhojpuri from Uttar Pradesh. So my daughter, she's 5 years old. So she
Okay.
she likes speaking Bhojpuri. So she has
Okay.
been to native place as well. So I try motivating her to speak that, because I want her to be connected to the language as well. But my wife tells her not to speak. So this plays an important role now. For example, you said that your kid will not be able to understand a concept very clearly in the mother tongue, like for example Gujarati. So what
Right.
important factor plays is, means we should be able to teach the kids the mother tongue itself. For example, a concept photosynthesis we teach in
Okay.
English, right, school, man. And
Right.
if the same concept is taught in Gujarati, in your case,
Yeah.
whether your kid will understand that thing in Gujarati very well or in English. I'm just asking.
I think they would understand it better in English, simply because I am trying to get them a combination of English as well as Gujarati as well as Kannada, because I
Okay.
am encouraging them. They're staying locally in Kannada. They rather learn Kannada. I'm extremely, very, very strict about it, because I've managed to learn a little bit of it in spite of spending 35 years in Bangalore. I'm trying to get the grips of it. I don't want my children to go through that. I think it's very important that they should learn the local language where they're staying. And mother tongue is something that the parents have to emphasize and teach their children. Okay. But when it comes to education, you have to have a universal language. I mean, for example, if I am teaching a concept to my children, I would rather explain it to them in English, because tomorrow they're going to go to school and the teacher is going to explain it to them in English. She's not going to come back in Gujarati and teach them, right? She has to explain it in English. So I might as well explain that concept to my children in English. I would not switch languages for that. I would stick to a universal language, what is followed in school, as well as what I would teach at home. But if I have to talk on a daily basis to my children, I would talk in Gujarati at home. That's just
Right.
what I would do.
So what I take from this is we are right now, focusing and considering the technical problems or the issues which can arise, because you are saying that we should not resort to local language, because then it is an issue when you go to the school. You cannot cater to everybody in their local language or the mother tongue. The
Correct.
technical, the infrastructure wise, and the technical problem regarding to it. All right.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, I get it. But then if the government addresses this problem, okay, if they come up with, of course, universal language is one solution, wherein you teach everybody in the universal language. The government's perspective here is a person understands better in their mother tongue, okay, because their whole environment at home is like that at mother. They usually speak in mother tongue at their home. And what they're trying to do right now is they're trying to introduce this multilingual aspect in the schools as well, wherein the students learn till 7th standard in their mother tongue or the local language. Now, of course, how that is going to happen, okay, or how are they going to determine that local language, or how are they going to cater to the students in their individual mother tongues is a question mark. That definitely is a question mark as to how they are going to go about with it. But Sugra ma'am, it's what they are proposing is at least till standard 7, okay, the student should learn in the local language or the mother tongue. Of course, English will also be taught, but then after that, okay, once they are through till standard 7th and all their concepts are clear, then they can completely transition to instruction in English. That is what they are suggesting right now. Your thoughts on this?
I feel one thing the government does not realize is the fact that, with migration comes a melting pot of very different languages and cultures in a single city. For example, you take Bombay, for example, or you take Bangalore, which are metros. Okay, you have people coming from all parts of the India in a single city. How is the government going to cater to it unless you have selective schools? Like you have only a Gujarati school where the medium is Gujarati and only teachers who know Gujarati will go and teach there, or you have teachers only with Kannada medium and only teachers who know Kannada will go teach in that school. You're bifurcating the schools, and how is that going to benefit? Till 7th standard, only those who know Kannada will be in one school, only those who know Marathi will be in one school. How are you making it universal for anybody? So I feel this is completely flawed. I mean, if you emphasize on the local language of the state and emphasize on teaching that, I completely agree to that, because you're living in that state, you need to know the local language, and introducing that as a second language is pretty good enough. You cannot cater to someone's mother tongue specifically, because that is the onus of the parents and the family, that they have to teach the mother tongue to the children. It's not on the school or the teachers to be doing that. I mean, this is the heights of spoon feeding, If the child does not understand the concept, then, okay, as a teacher, if I know little Kannada, I would try and explain that child in Kannada with whatever little Kannada I know, or Hindi, or, English, or whatever language. But I cannot go down to learning all languages so that I can cater to each child's mother tongue. That is completely not possible for any teacher to do. So I think that point for the government is completely flawed. I don't accept it at all. That's just my point of view.
Right.
Thank you for your input, Sugra ma'am. So
pros
I
and
had
cons.
another aspect to draw upon. Do you think the learning or the education that is imparted in a way right now in school, do you think it will stay the same way in the next 15 or 20 years? Right now, it might be that only because of pandemic, we are seeing a lot of surge in the online learning or
Yes.
the digital platforms. But
Yes.
eventually, is it possible that a large portion of this learning might shift to an online forum? And if that is possible, do you think this problem of having multiple children coming from multiple backgrounds in one classroom and having an issue of teaching them in the different, having the issue of not being able to teach them in different languages might be solved in an online learning platform where you can actually cater to these people with different languages in different classrooms?
Yes, I can foresee that happening in a way where through technology, each child can have a translation mode where, if the teacher is imparting in a particular language, it can be translated to the child and the child can understand in their own language. That is a possibility. But mind you, in that age group, there needs to be a lot of emotional connection between the teacher and the child, which I think right now it is completely missing. I mean, that one-on-one, that one-on-one with a child of that age group, they really, look up to you. They imitate their, peers. I think all that is missing in an online class. You're just looking at a screen, and I have done a demo class wherein I was teaching a group of 10 children. And believe me, they were completely distracted. They just did not want to be there. One was lying with their head up. One had a book on their leg. One child was just sitting like this. There was absolutely no focus there. They were just not interested. Versus when you're sitting with children, you're sitting in a circle, you're doing a story time, you have children involved in it. That's very, very different from, having online classes. Yes, with the pandemic, I completely agree, because of safety measures, we're doing it so that we do not lose an academic year for a child. But I personally believe that it's very important for the child to interact with each other, their peers, as well as with the teacher. They learn a lot that way, because children at that age group imitate, and when they imitate, they learn, they share, they have all the emotions in that 3 hours we as teachers, I mean, I'm sure Ananya ma'am will agree with me, we see the transition of a child when they come into the class in the beginning of the academic year, and when they graduate, how the child actually changes is what you need to ask the teacher, from the day where I had a child, I'm just giving a small example. I had a child who came into my class who literally stood for 2 days with their bag near the door. They just did not enter the classroom at all. And I let the child stand. Within a week, the child came, left the bag and stood. The next week, the child actually came down and sat, you know. And by the end of the academic year, I had the parent come and tell me the child has changed so much that the child actually sings rhymes. He enjoys coming to school. He enjoys playing with his friends. That transition is not going to happen with technology and an online class. I can guarantee you that.
That's true. Ananya, you're on.
Yeah, I can actually completely agree with Subra ma'am, because even I have a similar kind of experience. I had a child who was so adamant that he never used to speak. Like, he used to come in the class and sit at the corner, and he never used to speak to anyone. But with time and effort, because I feel in that age, this age needs the teacher plays a very crucial role in this age, and it's a very important role, because the child idealizes the teacher only at some point of time, because for that child, the teacher is the only idol. So so I have that thing, and like, I had spent 2 years with that child, and at the end of the second year, that parent came to me, and they were so happy that their child has, like, the child was totally changed. He, from an introvert, he actually used to go play. He actually used to go and mingle with other kids. So it actually matters a lot.
I don't think this is going to be the new normal. Probably just 2 years down the line, or 1 year, until this surge
Yes, yes.
is over. But I think that connect, face-to-face connect, or sitting across a child will probably help. And I don't think we are going to continue with this online thing. Probably it will help after school hours, but I don't think a mainstream school can work online.
Exactly.
Right. A hybrid model will be more apt.
Hybrid model will be more apt for work from home, but not for schools.
Right. So a hybrid model wherein, probably schools, of course, will be there. There is no substitute to schools, right? No substitute to schools. But then after school education, that can be online. Your thoughts on this, ma'am? Sri, ma'am?
Please share your thoughts.
Like I said, the emotional connect with the child is very important. Like Subra ma'am said, and I said at the beginning of the session that emotionally a child needs to be in the school, and that is not going to happen with online learning.
Right.
Like, we have a circle time where we connect with each child. We have our eye connect with the child. Unless we have that touch and feel, because children learn with all their senses: hearing, vision, taste, smell. And we have a lot of activities where we have taste and smell, and when we touch the child, and when we are doing activities, and that we are not able to do it through online. Parents are helping the children do all the activities, but then that teacher child connect is missing. And like she said, one child is lying down, and that also happens in school. But then the teacher is always there to bring the child and make the child sit in front of her, make the child talk to her. That eye contact is very important in a child's learning development.
Yes, yes. I think multiple insights came up, and it was actually really good to hear from all of you, even Sugra ma'am, Sriranjani ma'am, and even Deepak, Ananya. So I think what we mostly touched upon is how ECCE looks different from the normal education. What are the aspects which we should cover in early childhood education? And we also talked about how emotional connect should be built, how a student should be made ready to learn during this period of time. So it's also like an introductory period where the student is getting himself or herself accustomed to this method of learning. We also talked about the importance of problem solving during this time, and then also dive deeper into the policy and shared insights on how there should be more clarity with respect to certain structures about accessibility, about making early childhood education accessible to all and affordable to all at the same time. We also talked about how languages, how having a central language or how having like just the role of languages here, especially in metropolitan cities where there are students of multiple language groups together learning in one class. So how that looks like for that student to undergo training through multiple languages. So I think these are some of the points which we touched upon, and so it was a very insightful discussion. I also got a lot to learn. I got a very different perspective actually as a secondary teacher trainer, as a secondary like education enthusiast. I think this was a very new playing ground for me also. So thanks a lot for sharing these insights.